within their country. Or, more pertinently to Malaysia or the Philippines, in China, who's having lots of territorial disputes and territorial conflicts concerning the water within these countries. We tell you that the world of today has a lot of problems, has a lot of things that need to be tackled. And the mistake of opening government is that they believe that putting all their eggs into one basket will lead to helping out the entire pot. But we tell you in opening opposition that that in and of itself will lead to countries that don't get prioritized. Problems that won't ever be tackled because of the polarization that exists when you prioritize one thing over another, something that is inherent to the case of side government. I will do two things in my speech. Tell you, number one, the consequences of prioritization, and number two, why the principle of urgency and importance is better fulfilled on our side of the house. But first, before I get into my arguments, a few key rebuttals to the case or to the speech of the previous speaker. We recognize that resources are scarce and that we need to prioritize. But the point in which we prioritize, this is often done subjectively. How do they decide? How does the NGO determine what social issue or which country is more or less important? The problem when the NGO or anyone for that matter decides that it sends a message that some problems are more important and other problems are less important. We need to recognize that the media often plays a huge role. Geopolitical conflicts like Russia-Ukraine or Israel-Palestine get more coverage and get more virality. This means that oftentimes these more mainstream issues get more media coverage and more funding for global NGOs. We recognize that these issues are important, but why are we to decide that they are more important than other countries that currently, or other countries and other conflicts within those countries that currently exists? If the issue that the government side has is about resource scarcity, then the solution is to find a way to get more funding. The point in which we see that resources are scarce is precisely where we can ask the international community to help and for help, including local and international governments and corporations. Putting all your eggs into one basket is not a solution because it leads to much neglect and risk when one problem or social issue is seen as more important compared to those other issues. And when we see NGOs spreading themselves too thinly, that is when we can hold them accountable for not working hard enough to get more funding. There may even be issues where NGOs are corrupt, malevolent, or irresponsible. When we see that problem exist, we can do something about it. It's not bad to ask for help, which on-site government you necessarily can't have on a better level. First argument, what are the consequences of prioritization? Because we tell you that the status quo right now is concerned itself with two major international conflicts, Israel-Palestine and Ukraine and Russia. But oh wait, that's not really even true. Why? Because the Ukraine-Russia war doesn't get much news coverage anymore. It's all about, and it's mainly about, the attention within Israel and Palestine. Why does that matter? We tell you that NGOs have a vested interest in helping people. But more than that, in order to help those people, they need the necessary funds, the necessary capital in order to fund their projects and whatever it is they do to fight the good fight and alleviating what problems they might encounter. An interest that you only get from opening opposition, as OG didn't characterize what the interests of these NGOs actually are. And this, by necessity, requires them to target more popular problems that will give them the necessary clout, the necessary power in order to get support, donations, and money to more effectively get all the things that opening government wants, all of that help, all of that funding, all of that accountability. It only happens because of the funding that people give them. And that is precisely the world that we want to avoid. Why is that the case? Number one, countries that have the most explosive, most flashy, most pertinent issues in the world right now are going to be prioritized by these NGOs. Why? It's because that's the one that gets the most support. That's the issue that they would have that gets them the most amount of clout and the most opportunity to help that country. And what does that lead to? Because inside government, you are forcing these NGOs to only tackle one particular country, one particular problem within that said country, then you're going to be put in a place where you can only help the most, or it will be put in a place where you can only help the countries that have the most amount of clout. And why is this bad? We tell you, our argument number 2, that the principle of urgency and importance matters. That the reason that these NGOs exist in the first place is to help people on a broad scale, to help people with broad scale issues and broad scale conflicts that these NGOs can tackle. We tell you that that urgency and that importance is best fulfilled when you can have the help from outside NGOs and even outside governments, and you don't just placate yourself to one singular state, one singular country, when you're not even guaranteed to get all those funds that you necessarily want. And just to emphasize the point of NGOs in the first place, the case that government has, by necessity, requires them to be more active politically or to have a more politicized system of governing their NGO. We tell you that this is bad because NGOs need that particular thing, and that is why we oppose. Thank you.